Back on NFL Daily. I am here in slightly rainy Southern California, and my backyard is a little bit of a pond right now. And it's not because of the rain shook, it's because there's a broken water pipe deep within my ground, which is a major problem. And I've got someone digging the entire yard up in my...
French drain.
Like my water bill is going to be like thousands of dollars because it was leaking the entire time I was gone. And then I came back to a lake in the backyard. So that's fun. Position battles. I wrote down 59. I just thought it'd be a good exercise for me personally to just go through them all and like have an idea of what we're dealing with and write them down as I went. And we'd talk about the top shelf ones. And then I thought, why not take this as a challenge, Shook? Do you think we can get 59 position battles in without this show being like insanely long?
Well, I'm going to have to really be economical with my words, but everybody should take away is that if they ever need an example of how Gregg Rosenthal is a football sicko, it's the 59 position battles that we're going to go through.
Here we go, though. I'm going to rank them in order of how much I actually want to talk about them. So we can talk pretty quickly about the top 10, the top 20, and then we'll really fly through the rest. Just pick out some highlights and some quick thoughts, but we don't need to go too crazy. So I think the position battle I want to talk about the most is, maybe this is obvious because it's not all quarterbacks at the top, but Jameis and Russ and Jackson Dart is, to me, the perfect kind of dumb, chaotic summer fair that I like. You know what I mean? It's like a much better version of the Browns quarterback battle, which just seems like kind of depressing to me. Like, this all just seems so funny imagining those three guys in the room. They all have extremely chaotic playing styles. None of them really seem like they fit with Brian Daboll to me. Exactly. Maybe Winston. I don't even know. It's in New York. There's going to be good quote. Like, everything about it, I'm actually in on it. I'd like it even more if I felt like it was truly an open battle, but I guess it's Russ's job to lose. What do you think?
Yeah, it's the perfect quarterback training camp battle souffle. Like, we just get the primary ingredients. We get the accoutrement. We get the aromatics that make everything better. Like, you got your base is Russell Wilson, and then Jameis Winston's like, ooh, the interesting spicy thing that we threw on. And then Jackson Dart's the unknown that ends up bringing out the whole dish. It's Russ's job. This is how it's going to go. Russ is going to win the job because it's going to be his job. Jameis is going to be your backup, veteran backup, and Dart's going to be I don't know. We don't know anything about him. Let's see if we can get him on the. If things go really poorly, don't be surprised if Jackson Dart's on the field. But I think for now, that's the way it lines up.
See, I don't know. Like, Russell Wilson was with Sean Payton. Sean Payton couldn't wait to get rid of him. He didn't fit. He was with Arthur Smith and the Steelers. Ultimately, in terms of the contract offers, they chose Justin Fields as a guy they would rather have long-term over Russell Wilson. They did not want to keep Russell Wilson. He's not getting paid like that much money. I guess he's probably going to be the starter. I'd feel better. I think Jameis would be the most interesting and maybe give them the best chance to win. But I look at them all and just think of the ups and the downs Jameis has had since he was a number one overall pick, like one of the characters. Russell Wilson, like one of the defining figures of his generation, like so up and down, such a high ceiling in theory, but not anymore, and a really low floor. And that's how I think of Jackson Dart too, who as a prospect to me was completely boomer bust, had so much to learn. I think he is playing to potentially win the week 1 job. And if he plays well enough, he's going to get that job in like week 3 or week 4 at the latest. So we will see, but I'm just ready for anything there. Number 2 on my list is the Bucs wide receivers. So we got Emeka Egbuka. We've got Jalen McMillan, who we haven't talked about much on the show. And then we've got Chris Godwin, who's not going to be ready for the start of training camp. So he's there with his health. Obviously, it's his job when he gets there. But I just didn't want to sleep on McMillan, because, man, he ended the last season really strong. And they've got some other guys there, Trey Palmer. And then my guy, Sterling Shepard, actually ended the season as like a nice role player. So I just thought that was an interesting mix. Everyone automatically assumes the first-round pick Egbuka comes in there and has a great role, but this is where training camp can help you learn some things, like will he hit the ground running? And it doesn't always happen, and you can pick this up with training camp reports and kind of how the preseason is going.
Yeah, but I love this group on paper. Like, I know we're worried about Godwin not coming back healthy, immediately, but this is like the top 6. I'm good with this. Like Evans, Godwin, Ibuka, McMillan, Shepard, even Trey Palmer. Like, I like all these guys. They also drafted Tez Johnson, who's very thin and slight for
Forgot about that.
the NFL, but had a nice career at Oregon. Like, I love this group. And I also love the way that McMillan ended his season. Like, he, in the back half, basically from, week 12 on, he was pretty solid. Like, he 2 for 25 in one game, but then you get 5 for 75, 5 for 74 and a touchdown, 4 for 59 and 2 touchdowns. How much of that is due to Baker Mayfield and Liam Cohen in that offense, and the fact that he's playing with Godwin and Evans, or at that point it was just Evans and whoever else they could throw out there, including Shepard? That remains to be seen, but I think his upside is very high, and adding Ibuka into that group, I think it's one of the stronger receiving cores in the NFL, so I'm super excited. And frankly, I don't really necessarily worry about how it's going to shake out. I just think they have a lot of good options.
I agree. McMillan, I think don't sleep on it. It was a little like Bucky Irving. Like, he really picked up his play late in the season and made some difficult catches down the field. Like, he is the speedster of that group, and I just love that team. I love that group. The next couple are the Cowboys. I don't want to go too long. We might be doing a little Cowboys on Tuesday's show with Colleen Wolfe. But man, when I was going through it, I realized their edge position is awesome. Like, you have the best player in the league, potentially, Micah Parsons. That's who I would take, even over your guy, Myles Garrett. If I could just pick someone, I would take Parsons. And then on the other side, you have a battle of Sam Williams, who tore his ACL in early 2024, but looked really good in 2023 as like a young rising edge rusher. You have a first-round pick I liked a lot in Donovan Ezerako. You have Dante Fowler, who you just mentioned, had a nice season for Washington last year. And then you have Marshawn Nealon, who's coming off of an injury as well, but is expected, I think, to be ready for the start of the season. He had a meniscus tear. And I was thinking, like, is this the best edge group in the league? The Cowboys are a little frisky. That's a good group if everything worked out well. And those 4 are really fighting for snaps. Not everyone can play, because Parsons is playing every snap.
Yeah, you're going to stay fresh, and you're going to stay fresh opposite Micah Parsons. But I think it's really an example of you buying into and believing in the potential of what all these guys could be collectively. And you know what? It's July. I'm on board with that.
Only like 2 need to hit. And that's where the Cowboys running back situation doesn't make much sense to me. They're next on my list. Their running back battle is Javonte Williams, who just did not look good most of the last couple of years. Miles Sanders, who's sort of a journeyman at this point, hasn't really done much. And Jaden Blue, a 5th-round pick, who we're already hearing whispers and not positive ones about, like how he looked in the offseason. Just why? Like, why it shouldn't be this hard to find a running back, Shook.
This is also a team that let Tony Pollard walk, and they let Rico Dowdle walk, and this is how they responded. I think we've talked about this before. I hate this room. I think it's one of the lowest ceiling rooms in the NFL, especially when you're putting that next to Dak Prescott. You finally get another receiver next to CeeDee Lamb, and then you have this to show for running back. I don't like it at all. I think about Jaden Blue as the guy who ran the wheel route against Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl and for a touchdown. Like, it's basically, that's what I see out of him. And the rest of the group, Miles Sanders has operated in anonymity in Carolina, and like you said about Javonte Williams, after being an exciting guy out of North Carolina, has never really put it together in the last couple of years. So low ceiling, not excited about this group at all, and I think it could hold them back pretty significantly.
That it is a position, though, you can find guys from other teams. So could they be a Travis Etienne team at the end of training camp? Some sort of veteran that you could, send a 6th-round pick, swap. The Cowboys love to do that. Wouldn't surprise me, but just why? Number 5, let's go back to the quarterbacks. Tyler Shuck and Spencer Rattler. Again, what I like in the summer is it's like popcorn movies. I want it to be just sort of dumb. This is what August is about. Like, Spencer Rattler was all over the place last year, but he's got a new head coach in Kellen Moore, who I think will be a lot more organized, and he's got that year of experience in the offseason. Supposedly he looked better than Shuck, and yet we know Shuck, who signed a fully guaranteed contract and is in camp on time, is the heavy favorite. If it's anywhere close to a tie, they'll give it to Shuck. I would assume Shuck.
Yeah, Shook the investments in him. Yeah, well, I was kind of blew my mind when I heard some people pronouncing his name as Shook, even though it's spelled differently. It riddled me that. But yeah, it's low expectation team, and I think it starts at quarterback because this is the guy that is the favorite. But the agenda still exists, and the agenda continues to push Spencer Rattler into our consciousness. And I, like you, would totally sign up for chaos that leads to Spencer Rattler being out there and putting on a bit of a show with Kellen Moore. That would be fun.
They start the season with 3 NFC West teams, which is not easy. Is there a chance that they put Rattler out there at the beginning with some tough games before the schedule opens up, just to give him a chance, because you don't want to be like flip-flopping? Maybe the rest of our listeners aren't as interested in that, but like, to me, that's what August is all about. Like, finding a week 1 starter. It's these 2 weird guys. You know, Shuck is significantly older than Rattler, but to me had, very high ceiling tape in college and yet couldn't handle pressure. It's just a lot going on. I think it's fun. The Giants edge battle was next on my list because to me, it's just juicy that you have the number 2 pick of the draft, Abdul Carter, who you just assume is going to start. But you have a guy in Kayvon Thibodeau who was a top 5 pick, top 7 pick, hugely talented, hasn't really paid off that talent, but maybe he's got a fire lit under him. He's got some experience. Like, I'm not just assuming that Carter ends up ahead of him. So to me, this is it's kind of fascinating. You don't normally have 2 really high draft picks like that going after each other at the same position.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at this group as a whole, I mean, they have Brian Burns opposite them. Like, they're gonna be good either way. It's just
they have Chauncey Golston too, who's like he's a good 4th defensive end who they signed to some money, who played for the Cowboys too.
Yeah, so you want to talk about edge groups? I mean, I kind of like this group more than the last group we talked about.
Okay.
It's just a matter of when they drafted Carter, it was a no-brainer because a lot of people thought he was the best player in the draft, so it made sense. But on a roster construction from that standpoint, not so much. But then again, is it because Kayvon Thibodeau is not the guy they thought they were getting? That's the question. I think Carter wins this job, and I think it applies pressure to Thibodeau, who, I mean, he had his own endorsement deals a year ago, and now he's looking at potentially having to split snaps or start behind a rookie in Abdul Carter, which makes it very interesting, especially in a market like New York.
Yeah, I remember Kayvon, on draft
friend
we made friends with him on around the NFL, and I would say the Carter pick is not only was he the best pick, and to me they had 2 options, him or Travis Hunter. I think they made the wrong choice personally, but I think it had to be one of those 2, and you had to take him for the talent. But part of it is absolutely that Thibodeau hasn't lived up to his billing. He's been like a good player, but not a great player. And it's not like a quarterback battle. They're both going to play. It's just who's going to be first in line, who's going to get more snaps. And if Carter is playing a lot over Thibodeau and Golston kind of sneaks in there, and then does Thibodeau, honk a little bit? We'll see. The next one is a similar type of battle. I mentioned Shamar Stewart, who's holding out in Cincinnati, we presume. The camp hasn't actually started yet, but they were talking on Monday, just hopeful that he'll show up. And Trey Hendrickson also, they're not totally sure about, but I think he might show up and hold in. That the edge battle opposite Hendrickson, and if Hendrickson's not there, is pretty grim. It's a former first-round pick, Myles Murphy, who hasn't done anything in his first 2 years. It's Stewart, who was like the biggest workout wonder of the league, and it's another guy, Joseph Asai, who they brought back, who they've always had high hopes for. I remember him in that Super Bowl making a couple of plays against the Rams, but otherwise has been mostly quiet. And man, it's like kind of a thin group there, Shook, especially if Hendrickson's not there. But even if Hendrickson's there, that's an interesting group with some first-round picks after him.
Yeah, I think that in what I think is going to be a pivotal season for the Bengals, that they've done themselves a massive disservice by letting this Hendrickson thing last as long as it has. Understandably, because money is involved. But the rest of the group, I mean, you have to replace a guy who retired, and suddenly you can't figure out who's going to be there. And so you go with Osai. You hope you take traits guys in Stewart and Murphy, lack of production coming out of college, especially Stewart. And you can't even get Stewart in the building. Do you want to talk about grim? I would be very worried if I was a Bengals fan about this, especially if they can't figure it out with Hendrickson. And this is a defense that was so bad, Lou Anarumo lost his job. This is going to be an important part of your team if you're going to get back to the playoffs. And going into camp like this, I mean, every year there's something with them in camp, but this is not encouraging.
Right, just because I want to, combine them. Number 21 on my list is the guard situation with the Bengals too. It's just a really good team to have some really big holes when you look at their roster. Their cornerback position too, they have to shake out, but edge and then their guards, where really both spots are up for grabs, and they're hoping some of their draft picks pan out. And everyone just assumes the draft picks are going to pan out, and then you just look at Miles Murphy. A year ago at this time, he's the edge rusher. There are all these articles. Okay, after a quiet first year, first-round pick Miles Murphy is ready to go, and he's going to be a big contributor for the Bengals. And then we got nothing from him, basically, for the second straight year. And so they got to show that they can develop these guys. So it's a really good team in theory, because it's got really great strengths, but man, they have some big holes at edge and at guard. We got to mention the Colts quarterback situation. Anthony Richardson sounds like he's going to be ready for training camp, so that's good. It'll at least give him, in theory, even footing with Daniel Jones. Who do you think wins that battle, Shook?
I mean, the messaging with Richardson was weird when it was revealed that he wasn't going to be participating in minicamp. It's encouraging that he's going to be ready, or at least we think he's going to be ready. It sounds like he will be. I mean, this is an absolutely pivotal crossroads year for him. He's got to come through this year. And losing your job to Daniel Jones would be embarrassing for him, but also embarrassing for the Colts for spending the fourth overall pick on him.
And yet they seem like they want to do it. They gave Daniel Jones $14 million. What?
Yes, because I think Shane Steichen is tired of it. He needs somebody he can rely on. I don't know if he can rely on Daniel Jones unless he just needed a change of scenery. So I lean Richardson because of the investment in him, but I also don't think that they are completely committed to him in that they would overlook him being, outworked or outperformed by Daniel Jones in this camp. So I think it's going to be one of the more fascinating ones outside of, what we talked about in New York and what we might talk about in Cleveland, just because it's going to matter so much for the entire state of this franchise.
Right, and post-knee surgery, Daniel Jones was not the same as pre-knee surgery. I know he was never a Pro Bowl player, but he was worse last year than he's ever looked. And so maybe a year, healthier, he'll be better. But to me, Richardson should win this battle. They'd just be so much more interesting. But there's something weird going on there. I think they feel like tough love is maybe like motivating Anthony Richardson, and so that's why they've been so aggressive. We'll see. The Jags running backs, I mentioned Travis Etienne. Now I'm confusing the Trevor and the Travis of the Etienne brothers who are now in the NFL.
No, but
you have the original one is in Jacksonville, and he's facing off against Tank Bigsby and Bashal Tutin. And I know who's a 4th round pick this year. And I know fantasy guys base everything off last year, but sometimes guys show up different than they were the year before. And who knows, maybe Etienne shows up this year and he looks better than Bigsby and takes it back. It's an interesting group. And if Etienne isn't the winner here and they like Tutin, then maybe he's a trade chip at the end of camp.
Yeah, that's been the rumor, so much that Liam Cohen had to come out and talk about it months ago, about how much they love him and he shows up, he's consistent and everything else, which is kind of like the ownership vote of confidence right before a coach gets fired, where it's like, it's that last little nudge that we really like this guy, but we're also dangling him there. Bigsby outperformed him last year, and it was not a good offense. So, take that with a grain of salt. Tutin's a guy who's very fast, who didn't produce like the most positive marks coming out of, the spring activities. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic there with those three. But I think by the end of camp, if Etienne doesn't show that he's on track for a bounce back year, he's in trade talks, and we're talking about a Bigsby Tutin backfield in Jacksonville.
Yeah, Tutin was the guy who blew up the combine with that 4.2 or whatever, just a big boy running extremely fast. Finally, our top 10 to wrap up the top 10. We got 49 more after that. We're gonna fire through them. It's the Chiefs tackle situation. So they're starting camp with Juwan Taylor, who's been the right tackle on the PUP list. I found that really interesting because Josh Simmons, who fell in the draft all the way to the Chiefs, very talented tackle, because he's coming off of a major knee reconstruction, is not on the PUP list. So they have Simmons, the 1st round pick. They have Jalen Moore, who they gave $15 million a year to, who was the backup to Trent Simmons over in San Francisco. And I find this one really interesting because it's the Chiefs. It could impact the Super Bowl. But also, like, if Juwan Taylor takes a while to come back, like, could both of those guys start? Could Simmons be on one side and on the right side maybe, and Moore's on the left side? In the end, you're kicking last year's second-round pick, Kingsley Suamatea, inside to left tackle. Maybe Jalen Moore, to left guard, rather, actually could move inside to left guard. There's been some talk, too, if they like Simmons at left tackle and they pay him that way. So it's just a puzzle that the Chiefs are trying to figure out. But Josh Simmons, to me, is like a really big part of how good this team could be this year.
Yeah, and we also can't forget Mike Caliendo's role in this too, because this is the assembly of a puzzle, this offensive line. We saw how important it was to find some sort of stability there, which they didn't. They had to kick out Joe Tooney to left tackle last year. So they're just throwing a lot of options out there and hoping that they find a starting five. And I think that this could take on a number of different appearances in terms of where a guy is playing or who's playing, what position by week, who's starting, who's not, which is not super encouraging for a team that's been to the Super Bowl.
But they're talented. Like there's a lot of investment in that league, Shook. It's like it's a first-round pick who a lot of people thought was the most talented tackle in the draft.
It's not without effort.
It's Jalen Moore, who they're paying $15 million a year, who's interesting, and Jawan Taylor, who's been overpaid the last few years. And if he makes the team this year, and I assume he will, I would guess this is his last year with the Chiefs. So it's just it's interesting. They are making sure that Patrick Mahomes is protected, or at least making sure they're doing everything possible, spending a lot of money.
No stone
Supposedly
unturned.
they wanted Ronnie Stanley, and the Ravens stepped up and kept him. All right, we're going to start going a little faster here. We're outside the top 10. Our next three, we've got the Dolphins cornerback situation. It's just wide open. Like the top candidates to be their cornerbacks are Storm Duck, Cam Smith, Ethan Bonner. Those are outside. So I think they're going to add someone at some point. We have Kader Kohu, but he's more of an inside nickel guy. So that's just like a little worrisome if you're a Dolphins fan. I'm going to be watching that. You got the Bills' second cornerback. They drafted a first-round pick in Maxwell Harrison. But Tre'Davious White is back there. Dane Jackson is back on the team. So I'll be interested to see if Hairston really steps up as like a young draft pick. They want him to start. And then we got your Browns quarterbacks. I couldn't put them any higher than this on the list just because it's just a little bit of like, it's going to be interesting to watch, but for who, for what, Shook?
Yes.
To what end is this?
Two things here. The Dolphins defense as a whole is concerning to me, especially in a big year for them. And look no further than cornerback, as you mentioned, but the Browns quarterback situation comes down to a simple sentence I tweeted like a week ago. We posted a picture, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, of the four quarterbacks for the AFC North Browns training camp preview. And I just said, I'm sorry, but how do you not laugh at this picture? Because these are your options. Like, you got four of them. None of them are probably good enough to start for most teams, but they got to figure out and find one. So it's intriguing because if you like chaos and, like you said, popcorn movies, that sort of thing, you're going to get that in Cleveland, but it's not super encouraging.
Let's go through them. How many of them would be backups on most teams? Flacco probably would be a backup on more than half the teams in the league. He's, I think, a good backup, but he was freely available for not much money and no one wanted him. So that, for the most part, like, that says something. I don't think Kenny Pickett would be a backup on most teams necessarily. The Eagles dumped him. And then, you have Dylan Gabriel and Shadur Sanders, who are a third and a fifth round draft pick, wouldn't normally be counted on to be a backup. So I just want to kind of catch everyone up. If you haven't been listening to NFL Daily and you're like plugging back in at the start of training camp, just kind of where everything is. And so we're going over all these position battles. But man, I grouped a lot of these wide receivers together. So I'm just going to mention a bunch of the teams. And the difference at wide receiver is like, it's kind of figuring out what the order is going to be. But for the most part, a lot of these guys are making the team. But all right, let's go through it. The Jets wide receivers after Garrett Wilson, it's wide open. It's like Josh Reynolds, Malachi Corley, Tyler Johnson. It's not a bunch of good names. The Panthers wide receivers in general, you figure Adam Thielen has a role, Shook. Xavier Legette probably has a role. Tet McMillan was their top 10 pick. You have Jalen Coker. You have Hunter Renfrow. That could go anywhere like 1 to 5. I'm not sure what the order is going to be. The Patriots wide receivers, I already mentioned Stephon Diggs. He's obviously going to play if he's healthy. Demario Douglas, I think, is going to have a role for them if he's healthy. And then you have like Mac Hollins. You have my guy, the 3rd round pick, Kyle Williams. You have Jalen Polk, who was a high 2nd round pick a year ago, was a disaster, but you can't totally give up on him. Supposedly, he's looked good when he actually practiced. It was the games that threw him up. You have Kendrick Bourne, who I always liked. You have this guy, Efton Chisholm, who supposedly is like the next Danny Amendola, has been lighting up practice. You have Kayshon Boutte. Like, what is going on? Like, it's just these teams where you can just shake it all up and try to figure out, like, what stands out to you out of those 3.
It's a snow globe, and it's not because they
Yes.
play in New England. It's an actual snow globe. You just shake it up and figure out where it lands. I actually like Carolina's top 3. If Thielen can be the guy that he was last year, he was a pretty big part of that offense, and I still like Leggett. Ted McMillan, we'll see. Like, it was very mixed results on, depending on who you talk to for his evaluation, but he's a bigger target. So that's good for them. But the Patriots, yeah, it's just complete battle royale. Like, just drop them in and figure out who wins these jobs. And frankly, for a team that was terrible last year, I like that idea. I like that approach. Like, is Kayshon Boutte going to beat out Jalen Polk? Who knows? Is Greg Scott,
even
Kyle
you got to make the
Williams
team. I
gonna be
just
used?
listed like 9 names. Like,
Yeah.
and I didn't even, there are a couple more. It's crazy. It's essentially, and I consider Diggs more of like a 2/3 at this stage of his career. It's more like they have 8, guys who could be
2/3s.
Would you rather have their group or the Jets group, who has Garrett Wilson, but then after that, it's Josh Reynolds, Tyler Johnson, Malachi Corley. In theory, you're thinking, okay, well, they'll use 2 tight end sets and they'll have, you'll use their tight ends, but their tight ends aren't really good receivers either. Like, man, it falls off a cliff. Would you rather have the Patriots wide receivers or the Jets?
Can I pick the Panthers out of both of those groups?
The correct answer, by the way, is the Jets because they have Garrett Wilson. If
Yes,
you have
of course.
one great young receiver, that's still worth more, I think, than all the Patriots combined. But either way, it's not great. All right, more wide receivers. Titans, Steelers, and Broncos. So the receivers for the Titans after Calvin Ridley, it gets really thin. In theory, Tyler Lockett is their number 2. But man, like Van Jefferson is there. They drafted a couple guys, a Umanor and Chimere Dike are 2 mid-round draft picks. Like, who steps up? Treylon Burks is still on this roster, but always hurt. Xavier Restrepo is like a well-known undrafted guy, but that's wide open really after Calvin Ridley. Similar to the Steelers, rather, after DK Metcalf. You have Calvin Austin, you have Roman Wilson, you have Ben Skoranek, you have Robert Woods, you have Scotty Miller. And then the Broncos, I think this is a better group, but after Cortland Sutton, it is pretty open. And it's Marvin Mims, Vele, who did pretty well for them as a rookie last year, Pat Bryant, who they drafted earlier than expected, and Troy Franklin. So, like, out of those 3 groups, anything just stand out to you as the most interesting of those groups? But another group where 2 through 5 is kind of open.
Tape dogs, the draft nicks, the college guys really like Chimere DK's tape, so keep an eye on him.
4th round pick. They need someone to step up, don't they? I mean,
Yeah, they do. But I don't like
Calvin
the rest of
Ridley
that
as your
group.
like locked in number 1, man,
And
you're not
Burks is on
helping
his way out. Like, Burks hasn't done anything. He never justified that pick. He's on his way out. So I don't really like the rest of that group at all. The Steelers, I thought Roman Wilson was going to be a pretty important playmaker for them, and then he had an ankle injury and never got going last year. So keep an eye on him. I still like him as well. And the Broncos, I think, probably the best of the 3, just because I at least saw some production from that group last year. But yeah, if I had to take, I mean, the Steelers have DK Metcalf now, but DK Metcalf became just a go merchant in his last year and a half in Seattle. So, oh God, none of these are really great. I
don't think they're terrible, but it's more like getting our listeners ready for like a watch list. This is your watch list for August that I think is going to be interesting. The big advantage the Broncos have is they have Sean Payton, and he makes wide receivers look better, and they have a solid young quarterback in Bo Nix, whereas the Steelers, we'll see what Aaron Rodgers brings to the table. Wrapping up the top 20 here, Shook, is the Broncos running back situation, and it's J.K. Dobbins, R.J. Harvey, and Audric Estime. I gave a little bump on this list to like teams that are good, because to me, this battle actually is going to impact a team that has a real chance to make the playoffs again.
Yeah, I like the fact that they committed to Estime, who's like an old school power back, and they used him in short yardage situations last year. Dobbins always comes with the question mark of health, just because he's struggled with injuries so many times over the last few years. RJ Harvey is, unless you watched UCF football, you might not know who he is, but he's the most intriguing of the group. But I like this committee approach with a blend of different styles that I think will balance well with how they like to run their offense, which of course is getting Knicks out on the perimeter. I think they'll have some opportunities to find some running lanes.
Yeah, it's a great candidate to have like great fantasy value compared to where he's going to get drafted. We will do some fantasy in the coming weeks as we get ready for the season. That's the top 20. So, and I already mentioned the Bengals guards, so technically that's 21. I think that's a good spot. We're going to take a quick break, and then we are getting through the 59. It's 2-a-days. It's happening, Chuck.
I feel like I'm in conditioning right now.
My goal, Shook, is not only to entertain a little bit, but also inform. And I want our NFL Daily listeners to be the most informed of all their friend groups, of their entire town, of anyone they know. And so that's why they need to know the top 59 position battles. I'm a sicko, and it's why we're going to hit the news every day throughout training camp and keep you up to date. It's one of the times of the year I love the daily format because there's just these little things that if you're a sicko, like you have to be an hour into the position battles, then you want to know all the information. So let's keep it going. We did 21 position battles so far. Our next group, the Eagles in the secondary, their safeties, pretty wide open. They have a rookie, Andrew Makuba. They have Sidney Brown. It's more interesting to me because it's also like, where does Cooper DeJean go? You assume he's staying at nickel, but if the safety doesn't go well, like, could they be rotating him? They also have their other cornerback spot open. It's probably Keely Ringo, but they have Adoree Jackson there. So just their secondary, because they're such a good team to me, they get a little higher on the list. Just keep an eye on that. The Cardinals edge group I thought was interesting because they're potentially really good players, but boom or bust. BJ Ojulari was a really promising rookie 2 years ago before he tore his ACL last year. Baron Browning came there in a trade and then re-signed on a pretty nice free agent contract. And then Zaven Collins, who's kind of found a home as an edge rusher, was a first-round pick. Some interesting names they're battling for their second spot opposite Josh Sweat. The Jaguars cornerbacks are interesting just because Travis Hunter is part of it. So how much is Travis Hunter actually going to play at cornerback? We know he's playing at wide receiver. Jarrian Jones, Buster Brown is there. You assume Hunter's going to be on the outside. Just everything Travis Hunter is fascinating to me. We mentioned the Chargers receivers before, but I'm assuming Quentin Johnston is kind of locked in there at the X. So then you have Trey Harris, the rookie. You have Keandre Lambert-Smith. You have Darius Davis. They're all battling for snaps. And then let's finish this little pack at number 26, the running back position of the Patriots, Ramondre Stevenson, your guy Travion Henderson from Ohio State, and Antonio Gibson still there. They're all going to play, but it's kind of figuring out which snaps. Like, out of that group, what stands out to you?
I mean, I love that the running back room in New England. I know that you gave money to Ramondre and you kind of need him to produce, but I love the depth there. And again, a difference in styles a little bit too. I thought Gibson's time in Washington was cut too short. It was premature, and I'm glad that he's got a home there, even if he's going to be fighting for snaps. But for as much time as much time as we spent on the receivers and how it's a battle royale, I think this is a very solid top three at that position. So I very much love that. The Eagles secondary is an interesting examination of what happens when you draft well and you're so deep that some of the guys that you would expect to make plays earlier for other teams just don't see the field very much. And then you get like 3 years down the line and you're like, oh God, now we need those guys to play. And we still don't know if they're any good or not. Sidney Brown is one of those guys. So I'm excited to see how that kind of shakes out.
And Keely Ringo, too. Not that you would have expected him.
Yeah, you're right.
He's a talented cornerback who is, I think, a fourth-round pick, maybe third. But guy from Georgia that now it's their development. But, man, is that a young secondary when you think about it, because you had the two rookies last year getting the Rookies of the Year vote in Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, who, to me, DeJean's already among the best at his position, and Mitchell might not be that far behind. Like, what a young, exciting group. But I like the Eagles' kind of combination of change, because they do have some change on the defense, but also continuity, especially on the offensive side. All right, our next group. I had to throw a kicker battle in. Justin Tucker has been suspended by the league. We didn't mention that on the show. That happened during our break, but we already knew that he was cut. And so when you're replacing possibly the greatest kicker of all time, I would say he is Justin Tucker. Vinatieri obviously hit more big kicks, but if Tucker was in the position to do that, I think he would have as well. When you're replacing him and you're on a team that could make the Super Bowl, Tyler Loop, their draft pick, will be the heavy favorite over John Hoyland, but you never know. It's a rookie. What if he just stinks? Tyler Loop. You have the Chiefs running back, Isaiah Pacheco, getting some pop. Kareem Hunt is still there. Elijah Mitchell is on this team from the 49ers. Brashard Smith is a late round pick. I mean, Pacheco was a late round pick, so I'm not going to rule anything out. That's interesting to me because it is the Chiefs and it's wide open. You have the Raiders wide receivers after Jacoby Myers. You got Trey Tucker. You got Jack Besh, the second round pick. You have another rookie, Dante Thornton. Like, this is a team that kind of screams to sign a veteran. I mean, I don't know what Keenan Allen's going to bring at this point, but there is a Tom Telesco connection there. Maybe he ends up there. The Falcons edge spot to me was interesting, Shook, because they have two young draft picks that they took, very high in James Pierce and Jalen Walker, who are battling for time, but also some veterans, Leonard Floyd, who's been around forever, and Arnold Ebiketie. So how much time will the rookies get there? And then similar type of vibe in Washington at cornerback. Trey Amos is competing to start there, but you have Jonathan Jones, the former Patriots cornerback, a veteran. You have Noah Igbenogany is there. Can Marshawn Lattimore ever stay healthy? I assume he's starting, but is he ever on the field? So that's one of the kind of like up in the air spots for Washington. What stands out to you from that big pack?
Yeah, can he play well when he takes the field, unlike the postseason last year?
Yes.
I got to go to two places here. I'm going to the Raiders receivers because you are among them who love the Raiders just because Geno's there and they feel like they're headed in the right direction with Pete Carroll. But this is the position group that worries me the most. I know they made additions there, but it's one that I'm going to continue to keep my eye on. And it might be a candidate for them to pick up some of these other guys get cut elsewhere when we have these massive receiver battles with other teams. You might see the Raiders front of the line trying to add some of those guys. So keep an eye just to see how that shakes out. It's that and it's the Falcons edge group because they drafted two edge rushers in the first round. And they did it so confidently that I have to see it come to fruition. I need to see this follow through. And James Pierce being one of them, and you said Jalen Walker being the other. And Pierce had some questions coming out of Tennessee. So got to keep a close eye on that because they are deeper there than they were in previous years, which is big because that was a huge weakness for them last year. But a lot of it is unknown.
We are rolling to 59 position battles. And as I look at the end, I probably could have cut out like a couple of them. But, they say leave them, wanting more. Maybe we'll leave you wanting less. Number 32 on this list is the Lions' interior offensive line group. So, now that you've had the retirement of Frank Ragnow, there already was going to be some change there. Can Tate Ratledge start at center for them? Could he move over to guard? You've got Graham Glasgow there. You've got some players who've been there. Like, that's an important spot for that team. The 49ers edge group has a top 12 pick in Michael Williams against a guy they traded for, Bryce Huff, who's probably going to be more of a situational pass rusher. You have a veteran there, Yetur Gross-Matos, so that's opposite Nick Bosa. That's a big spot. They used to be known for their defensive line, their edge group. Now it's a little more of a question mark, but I think it looks better than it did a year ago. That's an interesting battle. I threw the Lions backup quarterback situation in just because it's the Lions. That's Hendon Hooker. Is he ever going to become a guy? He's against Kyle Allen. You have the Raiders cornerback. We just talked about, wide receiver. Man, cornerback is thin for them there. Who is their cornerback one? DeCamerion Richardson, Jacorian Bennett, Eric Stokes, Darnay Holmes, Darian Porter. Who knows? Who knows? 1, 2, 3. It's wide open. They're a candidate to pick up a veteran, but I'll just be curious to see how that shakes out. You got your Browns running backs here. We'll see if Quinshon Judkins is a part of the team. I don't think he will be necessarily early in the season, so that leaves Jerome Ford and Dylan Sampson, who's an interesting prospect. And then the Packers wide receivers will stop there. I think you have to wait for the games to see how the Packers wide receivers really shake out. We know Romeo Doubs is a good player. We'll see. I guess you could follow Matthew Golden. It's their first round pick, how his development is in camp. Do they give a role to Savion Williams, a third round pick? But we kind of know those Packers receivers. Christian Watson, not going to be ready for the start of the season, coming off of a torn ACL. I kind of want to wait for the games for the Packers wide receivers, which is why they were low on my list. Who stands out? Who do you want to talk about out of that group, Shooky?
Well, no, I think it's smart to wait for the games of the Packers just because they've just been so inconsistent year to year with production. But you've seen flashes from basically all of those guys, and then you add in the first round pick, it becomes more interesting. Honestly, I look at the 49ers front seven. It's not just the edge group, it's the entire front seven. This is a team that used to have a lot of household names, and really their entire defense. They've had so many guys leave. There's been so much turnover. It's a transitional year for them. And they also invested a lot in the front four. They drafted a couple of defensive tackles. But like this front seven that you looked at now as opposed to previous years, the big names are basically gone. You have Bosa and you have Warner. And the rest of it's like, all right, how are these guys going to fit in? So I think that's going to be something that they're going to sort out in camp. We're going to see a lot of examples of it during the preseason. But I think it's going to be a point of mild concern going into this year.
Yeah. I mean, I did not include their defensive tackle battle on my list of 59. You got to make some choices, Nick, even 59. And
no love for CJ West, the former Golden Flash.
Okay, yeah, they got two draft picks, Alfred Collins and CJ West, and they've got two veterans who have been pretty forgettable, Kevin Givens and Jordan Elliott. Like, these are not the 49ers that you used to see, and it's interesting how Vegas and the projection models have them ranked so high. Football Outsiders used to be the name, now it's Aaron Schatz at FDN. And they have the 49ers, I think, projected to win the third most amount of games in the entire NFL. But, man, they have some questions up front. All right, continuing on the list. We are down to 38 on the list. We got the Bears' number 3 receiver. So that could be the rookie, Luther Burden, who they took in the second round. That could be Olamide Zaccheaus. That could be Devin Duvernay. Just one of those that's like everyone always slots in the rookie. It's like, these guys have actually been in the league for 5-6 years, and they might not impress you that much. But, like, we'll see if Luther Burden lasts in the NFL 5-6 years. Like, you don't really know. So that's just one to watch. But if he pops off, he has a nice high ceiling to add some juice to that group. The Vikings wide receiver 3, they drafted a kid, Ty Felton, in the third round. You have Jalen Naylor there. You have Rondale Moore. They all should have roles, but I'll be keeping an eye on that. The Commanders are looking for a right tackle. They drafted Josh Connerly, but moving him positions to the right side. He'll probably be against Andrew Wiley. That's something to watch. The center for the Chargers, they're like rotating Bradley Bozeman and Zion Johnson between center and guard. Like, I don't know if they did enough at wide receiver or interior offensive line to make me as hyped as I want to be about the Chargers. You have the Panthers edge. Just in general, the Panthers edge group is, to me, very thin and wide open. Their linebacker is pretty thin as well. I combine that with the Dolphins linebacker, which is guys I know, Terrell Dodson, who's bounced around with Buffalo and Seattle. You have KJ Britt, who used to be with the Bucks, and then Willie Gay. That takes us to number 43, Nick Shook.
KJ Britt, who took Devin White's job in Tampa back in the day. That's probably the group that I like more, other than their edge rushing component, considering who they have still coming back. I look at Carolina, and what I see is a lot of chips being moved to the center of the table on guys that you've drafted. Nick Scorton being one of them. But this is what happens when you have a team that you've had to steadily rebuild over the years. You can't address everything in 1 or 2 off seasons. So it's going to be a test to them, but they did invest in the back end a lot with Trevon Merrick and JC Horn. So, I think that collectively they could probably be better, but they're not going to be super, they have Derek Brown still up there, and he's a hell of a player. So they're just going to expect a lot of production from key guys without the collective group being super strong.
Yeah, see, like you mentioned in the secondary there, I think is telling. Like, I'm with you. They made a nice signing in Morrig. They paid to keep Horn. They brought back Mike Jackson. And so that's 3 guys that actually feel pretty good about. But then they're a team that when you look at the depth chart, maybe these guys will step up, but it falls off a cliff after that. And so you need more than 3 defensive backs. Their linebacker position, like, you need more than 1 or 2 edge that you can count on. And I'm not sure who we can count on there. A long way to go. Number 44 on the list, your old friend Nick Chubb, the backup battle with the Texans, because I don't think Nick Chubb is going to start over Joe Mixon, but keep an eye on him. And Damian Pierce is still there. They drafted the running back Marks from USC, so that's an interesting backup battle. The Browns' edge spot is pretty wide open opposite Myles Garrett. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, the former Buccaneer, is part of that battle with Alex Wright. The Texans' offensive line, like, they blew it up. They got rid of Laramie Tunsil. It is a battle royale for like almost all their spots, and so we'll see how that works out. The Lions edge group is number 47 on the list. Already got to cross off a name, Josh Pascal, at least for the start of the year. And so you're counting on Marcus Davenport to stay healthy. That is never the best position to be in. Still a little thin, and you're counting on Aiden Hutchinson just coming back and being the guy that he has been. The Dolphins guard position, you drafted Jonah Savanea to take over that spot. But again, you're counting on a second-round pick to start, and so we'll see if he beats out Liam Eichenberg. We've got the Saints' third receiver group. Man, this group is weird and wide open, but Brandon Cooks is there. And then we wrap up the top 50 with the Seahawks wide receiver number 3 spot. And I wanted more Bobo in this show, so I'm putting that spot there. Jake Bobo, you got Marquez Valdes-Scantling, you got like a 3rd-round pick in Torrey Horton, and that wraps up the top 50 there.
Yeah, anytime you can get more Bobo in your life, you have to capitalize on that. You got to take advantage of it. And I would agree. I don't like a top 3 that includes MVS. I'm just going to say it right now. I would like to see.
He probably isn't going to win that group. I think he'll be 4th or 5th.
I would like to see more Bobo. I agree. I know we have some people in the newsroom out in LA that would agree with that as well. Ricky White III, UNLV product. I'd like to see what he does. I don't know. It gets pretty thin after the top 3, but we do have a lot of attention paid to Cooper Kupp and Jackson Smith-Njigba out there with Sam Darnold. Man, tricky year for them. Coming off of, making some significant changes and everything else. Could be a bit of a danger there. Could be walking on some unsteady footing there.
Yeah, and I'm really curious to see and hear the reports about Cooper Kupp. You would expect it to be very positive. Sometimes you can't trust everything in camp. Like I remember all the positive reports about Allen Robinson with the Rams a couple of years ago, and it didn't really happen when the game started. But I will be curious, really curious to see how Cooper Kupp's season looks in Seattle. But he's not on this list because he's not really battling. The final 9 names on these lists, at least these final battles, are lesser ones. I mean, I ranked them in order, but Rams linebacker is like wide open. The end of the roster, Texans wide receivers after the top couple guys. I'm talking about guys like John Mechie, Watson's there, Justin Watson, the former Chief, Braxton Berrios. That to me is interesting. The Browns wide receivers are pretty wide open after Judy and maybe Cedric Tillman. The Titans edge group, we'll see if their 2nd-round pick, Oladejo, can immediately become a contributor. Arden Keys is there. Draymond Jones is there. Some interesting names. See who ends up on top. You have the 49ers defensive tackle list. We already hit. I guess I did put them on the list. They were just much lower. And the Chargers linebacker, Junior Colson, who they took in the 3rd round, one of the first picks with Jim Harbaugh, his former Michigan player. Can he get on the field? He's fighting an uphill battle against Denzel Perryman. And you got your Browns tackle spots. They're kind of wide open because of health. The Colts off-ball linebacker. And yes, the Titans safety position. That was where I was like, okay, I've gone too far. Xavier Woods.
That's what did it?
3rd-round pick, Kevin Winston. I was like, okay, that's it. Kevin Winston's maybe an interesting player. I think I need to wrap it up right there.
I thought the Browns receiving corps would be the one that makes you stop.
Well, they have Deontay Johnson, and to me, I find Deontay Johnson interesting. Can Deontay Johnson actually become an NFL player again? In theory,
on a bad team?
Like, if you had told me 2 years ago, who would you take out of that entire group that's on the team right now, including Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman, it's like, I would be like, Deontay Johnson's probably the best player. So you never know. Maybe he could be wide receiver 1.
This is no shade towards Cedric Tillman, but the fact that you said after Jeudy and Tillman, I was like, oh, yikes. Because Tillman
he's got to make the team, I think.
He will, but you got Jamari Thrash, who was a draft pick, Michael Woods, who just hangs around every year. I don't know how. David Bell, who I don't know how he's still on the team. DeAndre Carter was a sneaky ad. I mean, this is not a good group. This is not going to be a good offense. Everybody should prepare for that. But I think the Junior Colson thing is interesting to me because for as good of a linebacker as he was at Michigan, I felt he was overvalued coming into the NFL and that he ended up with the Chargers at that pick because Harbaugh was the coach there. And so if there's going to be a year for him to prove that he's worth it, I think he starts toward that right now. And it's not a weak group overall. It's just that he's going to battle some guys who have a little bit more playing experience than him. Diane Henley being out there, Perryman, like you mentioned.
I mean, Henley, they're hoping becomes an all-pro.
He's a stud. He's a stud.
He was their breakout guy a year ago. And so Perriman's more the run stopper. Can you get it? I think Henley's kind of taken his job. And it reminds me of our training camp visit to the Chargers last year. And I asked Matt Money Smith, this was very early in Chargers camp, give me one player that fans don't know about that they should keep an eye on this year. And he said Deion Henley. And he nailed that because Deion Henley became one of the best young linebackers in the league. And I think he's stolen that spot basically from Junior Colson. We will be heading out to some training camps. We're working on the particulars. We got back together Saturday this weekend, NFL Network coming back on air. So our trips will come after that. But I hope we're going to be going to the Saints and the Cowboys, and I believe the Rams this year. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to this entire season. Our former Browns employee for a brief time, Nick Shook, we got you back with the NFL, and we couldn't feel any better about it. It's going to be fun doing this season, and we're going to be doing these Sunday nights with you throughout training camp, Shooky.
Oh, yeah. Looking forward to it. Years ago, I used to sweat wearing a bucket hat in Berea. Now I'm in air conditioned
that's
comfort
a hot
doing
one.
a podcast with you.
That's a hot one. I'd rather be doing the podcast with me, but I'm biased. We will be back on Tuesday with Colleen Wolfe. I'm looking forward to getting back inside the Chris Wesseling podcast studio with my friend Colleen, check in on what her summer is like. Yeah, like when the majority of the NFL is literally reporting for training camp tomorrow, like that is the definition of football being back.